What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Arnies. We are three box pilots thrilled to be talking about another fucking multiverse story. I'm Matt Johnson, and I wish Joel Edgerton would just use his Australian accent because it certainly sounds like he wants to.
I'm Keith Baker, and I would immediately get hit by a car in an alternate reality.
And I'm Austin Terry, and in my alternate reality, Dwayne Johnson won the power struggle for the DCEU.
On today's show, we're finally diving back into our favorite pool, which is that of Apple TV. The gift that keeps on giving, if you ask me. Ted Lasso, Shrinking, Severance, Silo, etc., etc. The list goes on. Now we're back with Dark Matter, kind of one that came a little bit out of nowhere. It seems like it's kind of fitting into the more dramatic, sci-fi, like weird vibe that Apple's been kind of tackling with some of their more dramatic projects with like the latter that I mentioned with like Severance and Silo. So I'm excited about this one. Based on a book. Doesn't seem like this is a series like some of their other stuff, so kind of a one and done, but we'll see if this becomes more than a limited series type of thing. But I was just excited to hear that, hey, there's something on Apple TV to watch. Let's review it, because every time we talk about Apple TV stuff, I feel like we have a damn good time. This one is about a physicist in Chicago who is warped into an alternate version of his life, leaving him to fight to return to his previous life to prevent the alternate version of himself from harming his family. So there you go. Quick little log line, already confusing, despite being one sentence. This show kind of conjured up some anxiety for me. Like,
oh, really?
If this happened to you, this is like secretly one of the most devastating things that I think could happen to you, like, ever. So, like, I want to know, like, what's your mindset? How are you, just based on the log line here, we're not getting into spoilers quite yet, but, like, what are you doing to try and get back? Are you? Do you give up? Like, what are you guys doing?
Well, I think the key thing here is our protagonist is a scientist who understands how all this works.
That's
and the
also
three of us,
for us
are not equipped. So I think we're giving up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with that, let's go ahead and get into it. Austin and Keith, did you care or know about this series before we decided to watch it? And then I'm super curious to hear about your non-spoiler thoughts on the first 5 episodes of Dark Matter, now that we only have 4 left.
Yeah, I actually cared a lot about this show. The trailer did come out of nowhere, but when I watched it, it hooked me immediately. So I kind of added it to my list to check out the premiere. And my wife also read the book, so she was excited to check it out too. But yeah, I mean, the premiere hooked me immediately. And I think it's done a really good job of committing to its sci-fi premise. And Matt, you nailed it with your intro. Like, Apple TV is becoming the home of great sci-fi content. And I think this is just another one to add to the list. It stays like a very melancholy tone. It's like kind of a quiet show too. Like, it's very slow moving, but then it has these great cliffhangers at every episode. They've done a good job, at least for me, of like keeping the science unattainable to where I don't think I ever do it, but I still can like learn it and understand it for the show. So I think they're making it accessible to a lot of viewers. And then they're really committing to this multi-world premise. So we've seen so many different realities already just in its 4 episodes. And I've also been enjoying that they haven't done like kind of the Loki thing where they like end up in a different time period and have to like get dressed up in different costumes, and it kind of gets fun. Like, this has stayed like a very like almost post-apocalyptic style type show where you're just trying to do everything you can to get back to your life, and it gets harder and harder every episode. So the way the science is staying interesting, the way the mystery is kind of staying under the surface, and then the way every episode kind of builds and gets deeper into this world has kept me engaged. And I'd highly recommend this one to everybody.
Yeah, me too. Austin, I think you told me about this show. I don't even know if we were even planning on doing it for the podcast yet, but you had recommended it to me, and I was getting ready to start it. And yeah, I was hooked immediately too. First episode in, I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to just start the second episode, and I want to binge this whole thing. Like you said, with the sci-fi, I know we've all three kind of, I guess, kind of got a little burnt out on the multiverse type stuff with like Marvel and other adaptations, but this really works for me in this world. It's good to see Joel Edgerton again. I hadn't seen him in anything in a long time, it feels like. But yeah, I think the mystery is really fun. It's building suspense each episode. You know, you can kind of form these predictions on how things are working with it, but then it'll, like you said, Austin, the science behind it that they're showing you will kind of throw you for a loop. And you're like, oh, that's how it works. I was not expecting that. I'm hooked after every episode, and the cliffhangers are fun. And then these alternate realities that we're getting are really interesting, and some of them are probably very realistic as well. So yeah, I'm excited to keep going with it, and I can't wait for the second season.
Yeah, this was one that I feel like I hadn't heard about it until it started airing, and then you guys started mentioning it. Maybe we should talk about it, and you were just like, no, it's just good. So then I was like, okay, I got to add that to the list, and then some other people mentioned it to me. I was like, okay, I guess I really need to watch it. I mean, it sounds like this is another Apple TV show that's kind of gaining steam really quick. Like, people aren't really, I don't know, they don't know about it beforehand. I guess that's just more of a tribute to Apple TV. It's just something new comes out, and then you're like, oh, I hadn't seen a trailer or really knew about it. I guess I'll watch it. And then people can't stop talking about it. That seems like how Apple TV is operating, which is pretty cool. And after watching the first 5 episodes, it's been an interesting watch, because I would say at the beginning of it, I really loved it. I was hooked immediately. I was so intrigued. I agree with what you were saying, that it's a little bit of a slower kind of sci-fi type story, but I love those. So I was like, okay, I think this feels like a normal story. And then I'm guessing the sci-fi is going to kind of hit me out of nowhere, which is kind of what happens, which I like. And then as it went on, I went from loving it in the initial couple episodes to, I would say, liking it by the end. But then by the end of the 5th one, I went back to loving it again. We'll get into spoilers later, but there's a very interesting conversation about the main plot is kind of meandering with some things going on. And I'm actually, despite with the most recent episode ending, and I'm feeling in a very good place with this show, I am very nervous about how they pace the story out for 4 more episodes. I don't know if there's enough meat on the bone here to really pace it out in a way that's interesting. I kind of feel like the story that we've got in the last couple episodes is just going to be what happens for 3 more, and then 1 at the end kind of wraps it all together. I'm very curious how they do it, but anyway, so it's kind of a weird watch for me, because I was like, oh my God, this is so good. How did I wait to watch this? I'm so glad I have so many to binge. And then as I was binging it, I was like, okay, I just kind of like this now. It's just kind of going on doing the same thing. But then by the end of the most recent episode, I gotta say, I was like, ooh, I'm back in. So I guess that's just, Apple TV. They continue to surprise you. So I do have a lot of critiques on the show, but I am also a big fan of it. Easy recommendation. And I'm with you, Keith. Where has Joel Edgerton been? I want to see him in more things. I know he's in a lot, but I'm glad that he's the star of something like this. And don't get me started on Jennifer Connelly. I need her in everything, too. Love her.
And not only the star, but playing 2 characters. So he's got all the screen time in this show.
True.
Yeah, I think that's some interesting call-outs, Matt. I do want to get into that more, because I think by the nature of its premise, it would feel underserved if it wasn't meandering in a way, because you have to really buy into this multiverse stuff. But I do agree that what else? Where is there to go from what we've already seen? Is it going to feel formulaic? And then I know we've joked about being tired of multiverse stuff, but I think what I'm tired of is bad multiverse stuff. So when something like this comes out and it is good and interesting, it shows you what these stories could be, and kind of makes you realize how bad all the other stuff we've gotten from the MCU and the DCU has been. Yeah,
well, it gets to a point in the the Marvel type stuff and DCU where it's just they're reaching too much. They're only doing it so they can get new characters. Where this is actually making this, like you said, Austin, earlier, the science behind it and how it all works, making that more interesting. And kind of just following your everyday people in the Earth we live in. I find it to be more interesting than following Thor or something like that, than an alternate version of Thor. It just gets tiring after a while in those types of universes.
Yeah, I think it seems like the 3 of us are more interested in those types of stories when it's tackling it for dramatic reasons. It feels like whenever they're going into some new version of time or reality, it's to focus on characters. It's not to do some flashy cameo or make some joke about, look what this version of the character, oh, they're bumbling, they're stupid. So it feels like that's kind of what the multiverse type stories have become. That's not exclusive to Marvel or superhero stuff. Lots of stories are doing that now. But I like that this one is doing it for more character purposes. So yeah. But yeah, I think we're kind of already teetering here. I don't want to get too far into this. It sounds like the 3 of us definitely recommend this show. Another win, I would say, for Apple TV. Whenever I was looking into it, I hadn't seen that it's been renewed for season 2 yet. Again, we still have 4 episodes left, so hopefully, things kind of pick up and we get a renewal there, because I am curious to see more, at least at this point, a little bit over halfway through the season. But yeah, Go watch this one. Big recommendation. And then, I think the rest of this conversation, we got to get into spoilers because there's a lot to talk about here.
And Apple TV, we've said it before, but we'll say it again. We will sell out and only talk about your content. We love your platform. Please pay us. We need some money.
That's right. Love it. All right, everybody. Go watch Dark Matter, get caught up, and then come on back because the rest of this is going to be all of our juicy thoughts and theories. All right, everybody, welcome to spoiler territory for Dark Matter. I guess you could call it like a little mid-season catch-up or review, whatever you want to call it. But before we get into our main topic of discussion here, kind of all our thoughts, everything that we wrote down we wanted to get into, let's do a quick little cast, crew, and reception talk.
Okay, so Dark Matter is created by Blake Couch, who is also the author of the book the show is based on. It's also directed by Jacob Verboegen, Selling Head, and Logan George.
And going into our cast, we got Joel Edgerton as Jason Dessen, Jennifer Connelly as Daniela Dessen, Alice Braga as Amanda Lucas, Jimmy Simpson as Ryan Holder, Dio Okenihi as Leighton Vance, and we got Oaks Fegley as Charlie Dessen. All right, guys, there's our cast and crew. Any positives, any negatives? What do we have?
I think it's hard to find a bad performance here. I'm going to give my highlight to Alice Braga as Amanda Lucas. I think her character has the hardest role to play in this show because she knows now both versions of Jason and loves the evil one. So she kind of has to navigate this path of finding out the person she fell in love with turned out to be evil. And now she's also watching the good Jason that she is seems like to be developing feelings for, knows that he has a wife he's trying to get back to. And she's lost her reality and is kind of been the only person in the show that stayed committed to just trying to be a good person. So you can see the beneath the surface conflicts that her character's going through. And I think Alice Braga's done a great way of just even in the second episode when she's freaking out about being in the box and she says I trained all these people and I can't even keep my shit together. Just things like that I found really intriguing and endearing about her character.
I'll shout out Jennifer Connelly as Daniela. I just think she did a good job of playing, I think what we've seen so far, at least 3 different versions of Daniela. And I thought she did a really good job of playing all 3 different versions, going through very different things in those alternate realities. So yeah, I think Jennifer Connelly's killing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love her and everything. She's great in this. But yeah, I'm with you guys. It's hard to pick. With this one, it's just hard to pick the best one because I think everybody's so good, and I agree with your guys' picks. I think Joel Edgerton is a super compelling lead. I don't think I've ever seen Dio Okenihi in anything. I could be wrong, but I'm liking him as this one version of him is already an established antagonist, and it seems like one version might be slowly becoming one, which is interesting, and I kind of like both versions of him. And then I guess I can't fully call him out because he's barely been in the show, which is surprising because as far as I can tell, he is a series regular. But Jimmy Simpson, I just want this guy in everything. I love him in everything, and I want him to be in this show more.
He's good.
We've gotten a couple versions of him, but not a whole lot of him on screen. I feel like after episode 2, I feel like we haven't really gotten much of him at all. So I'm assuming since he's a regular, that means he's coming back in the back half of the season. I hope so. But yeah, everybody's great in the show. I've been enjoying everybody, both in front of and behind the camera, all their work.
Everybody's done a good job of having their characters feel integral and important to the plot too. Everybody has their own different role to play. It doesn't feel like there's any wasted characters in this show, which can be hard to do when you have a 10-episode series.
Yeah, so usually whenever there's not a whole lot of information out there, we don't spend too much time talking about critical reception, but I thought I would read this because I think it might be a good segue into our conversation today. So, so far, all I could really find is that Dark Matter has received positive reviews so far and currently has an 80% over on Rotten Tomatoes. The site's critical consensus is Dark Matter's intriguing ideas are spread a tad thin over its season-long runtime, but fans of foreboding sci-fi will find its residue addictively sticky. And I think that's actually one of the better kind of consensuses that we've read lately because it is very positive and they're acknowledging most people are liking this, but the idea of it being kind of a slow burn addictive sci-fi, while also should this have been a 6 or 7 episode thing? Are you able to, it feels maybe a bit spread thin knowing that we have almost double the amount of season left. So I kind of understood both sides in this. I mean, despite it being a positive review, it kind of dipped into why they love it and also some fears about going forward and what it's been so far. So I think that's kind of a good, general starting point for this show, I thought.
I think it is one of the better like coincides thoughts we've heard from Rotten Tomatoes on a show, but I am kind of missing that there isn't a pun this week because I really thought we'd get like the Schrodinger's cats out of the box with dark matter.
Oh, I can't believe they didn't do that.
But yeah, I think that does kind of take us right into our broader discussion here, especially when they talk about like foreboding sci-fi and is there not much meat on the bone here? But I did want to start with like just the general atmosphere of the show. I mentioned at the beginning, I find it very melancholy, and they've done a really good job, I think, of keeping it foreboding, especially with now how many times we've had to watch Jason watch his wife die in the show, and I can't imagine how many more times we're going to see that.
Ugh.
Like, but every time that hits hard, and they've done a good job of like getting you to care enough about that. I also do think if we want to add the meat on the bone to this kind of topic, but I mentioned it in our non-spoiler section, but with this being a multiverse show, I think if it was 6 episodes, I'd feel disappointed because I don't know how many alternate realities we would see. And that was my biggest critique of like the Doctor Strange movie was we only went to one different multiverse. So I like that this show is kind of giving us 2 or 3 each episode.
You brought up a good point there with him watching his wife die. I guess what, 1 or 2, twice. Yeah. The sick Daniela and then the other Daniela, the artist Daniela gets shot.
The one that got shot in the head.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
So I wonder as we go on with the show, if he is going to start like just becoming more accustomed to his mission and getting back to his world, and like it's just going to he's going to become more desensitized to seeing alternate versions of his family or friends in other worlds he comes across. I mean, what do you guys think? Or do you think he's going to be kind of more attached the whole time as he goes along?
Well, and we've even seen a 4th version where she is his ex-wife and they've had a divorce and he's supposed to be in prison.
Oh, that's right.
There's so many different possibilities with this relationship.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so it just seems like, to your point, it's like everything that he's on his journey to get back home, it's been like every interaction with, whenever he's finally been able to find Daniela, a different version of her, it's always been negative or it's always ended negatively. So yeah, it does make you wonder, like, what is the path forward? Does he stay optimistic in finding, his world? Is he prepared to keep watching her die or just like seeing negative versions? I don't know. And I think that's kind of the interesting thing. And it kind of ties back into the pilot. I think the pilot episode might be my favorite so far. I might be in the minority there. I just think I'm such a sucker for sci-fi that becomes sci-fi despite like everything before the catalyst not indicating that it will be sci-fi, if that makes sense. Like, I love that, like, he's just this guy that, like, seems to have, like, a great family life. They're just going about their day, doing their thing. He's a college professor, seems to be doing well enough for himself, and the family's doing fine. They have good relationships. And then he hears from his best friend who's like, I won the fucking award. And, like, you can see that he's happy for his friend, but he's also, like, it's making him think about his past. And he's like, that could have been me. Should it have been me? It could have been me. And then just like walking home from the bar one night. And then this could have been like a serious drama or something. But then out of nowhere gets kidnapped by an alternate version of himself and sent to live in that life because his alternate version's pissy that he didn't get to have the family life. It's like, I love sci-fi that starts kind of out of nowhere like that.
Yeah. And then if we even go into episode 2, when he starts to develop almost like a flirty relationship with the version of his wife that they had the child with, but like he still knows this version of his wife from their own past. And then so in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be interesting. Like he's going to be paired up with a different version of his wife, trying to get back to the wife that he married. Like, is that going to be the conflict of the show? And then she gets shot in the head. And it's like, oh my God. Like, this show just surprised you at the end of every episode for like the first 3 of its premiere.
But yeah, kind of going to your original like question or point, it's like the general atmosphere of the show is very strange because it's like the main version of Joel Edgerton that we're following. It's a very dour story. There is levity there, I think, as over the episodes, like Amanda and he become closer as friends, or I don't know, whatever you call them, because of course that's a complicated relationship that we'll get into. There is some levity there, but it's very dour. But then it's like, then it'll occasionally cut to evil Jason, I guess as we're calling him, and like going through his story, and like there's a lot of like there's a cool factor there. There is like some like happiness there, but then there's also some like stuff. It's like, oh, you made that decision. That's not what our Jason would do. So it's weird. It's like it's very dour at times. It's strangely sweet at times. Like it's a very strange tone overall.
Yeah, I think they've done a great job of having this premise of like, what if the villain of your story was an alternate version of yourself? Like that's already very scary. But then they've done a really good job of like, you're seeing people that know evil Jason, some that even love evil Jason, and they say like, he's not full on evil. He's committed. And our version Jason knows like, oh, I know that about myself. Like I'm scared about what I'm capable of. And so seeing that kind of push and pull between the two is interesting. And we haven't seen like bad or evil Jason do something like diabolically yet in this show. The worst he's done is replace the alternate Jason so he can take his life, but he's still been like sweet to the family and trying to build things back. So it's also, I'm curious to see like what are more of his goals going to be as we start to spend more time in the back half of the show.
Yeah, and so his overall goal that what we've seen so far was, I want to have this family life. I don't want to have the success that I had in my world. I want to live the quiet suburban Chicago life. But now we're seeing, especially in the last episode, he's like starting to get interested in his projects again.
Well, it's been interesting too for this whole show. Like his goal has just been, I had the option of I can have my life with Daniela or I can be the scientist. And in his reality, he chose the scientist, but he regrets it. But then on day 2, he gets bored and quits his job. So he's finding that he's also not enjoying this. And I think he's starting to get like more and more frustrated that he's not happy in this timeline either.
Yeah, and we're already seeing that because in like the last couple episodes, he's sought out a version of Leighton Vance, his business partner in his original timeline, and now he's taking him on adventures through the special box because he needs an investor, because he's like, I quit my job, this is what I would rather do. So it is like a fascinating like character, because like you said, Austin, it's like, it's very fair to call him Evil Jason. I mean, he literally was like, I regret something I did in my life. I'm going to go find an alternate version of myself that made the other decision, the decision I wish I made, and I'm going to force them into my life, and I'm going to replace them. Nothing more evil than that. So yes, they are evil, but it is super interesting as a character that everything after that, after the pilot episode, basically, he seems to be actually trying to assimilate into this life, and he seems to be doing the best, but it's funny because he's never been a husband, that he's not a good husband. Like the communication is breaking down. He's like not realizing, I probably should have like talked to you about certain things. But then you still see that he's apologetic and trying. So it's a very fascinating character. And he's like, I'm not dealing with these fucking kids. I'm like a world-renowned physicist. I'm not going to teach college physics. Like these kids are stupid. They're watching YouTube while I'm trying to talk. So I'm quitting. But then once he quits, it's like, oh shit. What do I do now? Well, I guess I need to utilize my skills to like get an investor for some big project. What project do I have? Oh, it's the box that got me here. So it's a very, like you both said, it's like he wanted to assimilate into this life, but already very soon into that, he's realizing like, I think I'm going to have to kind of go back to certain things that I did in my old life because that's all I know how to do. Like I'm not a good husband because I've never been one. So I'm just kind of like faking it till I make it a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm curious too, because so far the only motivation we have for Evil Jason is he just wants the life with Daniela that he never had. But is there more to the surface there? Because now at the end of episode 5, he's getting ready to send the alternate Leighton out into the multiverse, and then he's going to lock the box up. But he's also went and like he's stole more of the medicine. He's gone back to his world and like told the scientists there to keep working, which I thought was interesting too. So what are more of his goals? Because I think there's more beneath the surface here.
I mean, it's a good question because if you think about it, and that's also why Evil Jason is such a compelling character, because I didn't think about it until you just said that, but he's sealing up the box in their world. So Leighton will still be able to go in and go on his adventures as promised. Theoretically, Jason can still get the millions from Leighton. So nothing has changed in that front. But by sealing it up on his end, that means this version of Leighton can't come back, which this version of Leighton doesn't care about. He's like, I don't give a shit. I want to go make my name in a different reality. He's sealing it up because he doesn't want good Jason to be able to come back through with Amanda. That also means that he can't go in. So that's also where it gets interesting. So it's like he is very committed to being in this world. Like he doesn't want to leave. So yeah, so that's what makes his motivations and where he ends up very intriguing. I mean, my assumption based on that is somehow good Jason and Amanda make it back through before he's able to seal it up, and there's going to be some confrontation there. I kind of find it hard to see that evil Jason makes it out of this season, but I don't know. Like he's so committed to being here that it makes his path through the rest of the season very like up in the air.
I do find it interesting that he's kind of trying to restart this company with the box already established. Because in his world, he spent like all his time was just getting the box to work. But now he has a working box and is trying to start the company like from that step. So I wonder if there's going to be more to it there. There was also like when he went back to his world to get the medicine and the scientists told him that both Leighton and Jason had escaped. There was like a twitch on his face when she mentioned that that version of Leighton was also out in the multiverse too. And I know last time we saw that Leighton, he was hurt, but we haven't seen him die yet. So I wonder if there's something there. So like, does good Jason's Leighton and evil Jason's Leighton, do they encounter each other in the box? Or does something happen where evil Jason has to confront his Leighton too, like out in the multiverse? Evil Leighton was interesting too, because his whole goals from this was to find a solution to climate change in his world. And he committed to the extreme where he's willing to kill people and all that, but his motivations are almost like more pure than evil Jason's are, even though we've seen Leighton do more evil things.
The Leighton from evil Jason's timeline, again, we talk about the word evil and what it means, but evil character, happy to murder people in order to cover things up. He's evil. He's awful. But then you hear about his motivations and you're like, is this for money? Do you really believe this? Maybe there is a good bone in your body somewhere. But more importantly, you can understand his frustration, because you have to imagine, based on how evil Jason and quote-unquote good Leighton have like been talking, it's like, so it seems like in every reality, these guys have a rapport. So then you think about, what would bad Jason and the Leighton that we met first, what would they have been like originally? And probably what it would have been like is like, Jason fucking sells Leighton, hey, I need you to invest, here's my product, and then they get into business together, and then they do all this like work together, and Leighton's probably saying, wow, we can actually change the world. Like this is something we can actually use. And then just at the snap of a finger, Jason's like, you know what, fuck this. I actually built this box not for money, not to help you. I built it because I'm like a regretful piece of shit, and I just want to go be with a woman that I like left for no reason. So then he just disappears. And then Leighton's like, what? Like, what do I do now? Like my partner just left. And then he comes back, and then, oh, big surprise, it's not your partner. It's a different version of him. So you understand his frustration. Like, he's an evil piece of shit for, like, killing all these people, but that would be, like, the most frustrating thing that could happen to you. It's just like, oh, my partner actually didn't care about me or this project.
And then you take that frustration and you look at someone like Amanda, who fell in love with evil Jason, and then found out he was only building this box to go find and build a life with another woman who isn't her. And then now she meets the version of Jason who I think she like idealized in her mind could be. And she's stuck traveling with this guy who also loves someone from another reality. But she has all that frustration too, and probably more so than Leighton does. But she has still been willing to stay good and try to help people on this journey.
I'm also kind of curious to see what's going to happen with the other people that supposedly disappeared. We know we found Blair. We found the alternate version of Blair hiding out in another reality, and she said she's been there for like, I don't remember how long she's there.
A few months, yeah. It's interesting too when we go into the other pilots, because if we go back to Leighton's original goal, it was to travel the multiverse and bring back science that can cure climate change or cancer, like you said, Keith. But then we meet Blair, who kind of reveals that there are consequences from bringing one thing in a multiverse to another universe, because she accidentally brought those bugs with her, and those bugs kind of did a swarm throughout the world. And then we go to the plague world, where Jason and Amanda almost catch the virus there and could have brought that somewhere else. So there's actual consequences to all this multiverse stuff, which I found really interesting too. And like they now have to be cognizant of like, what are they going to be bringing from one world to another that could cause harm?
And then, just the different worlds they run into really quickly. What do you guys think about those? Like you have the one that he walks out and he can't even breathe. He's like, oh, there's no atmosphere, and the sun was like right there. And then there's the water one where I guess Chicago had been taken over by Lake Michigan and they fall into water. Then there's the snowy one too, where Amanda almost dies from hypothermia.
That was the only episode I felt was kind of wasted. Like it was a fine conflict, but it was a long time to be there watching them dig in the snow.
So this is what I was talking about at the outset. This is where it meandered for me. It just felt like, oh, okay, we're going to open some doors and we're going to end up in some crazy versions of Chicago. And it's like, we're there for a few minutes. Sometimes we're there for a few minutes too long. Sometimes we literally just open the door and like, whoa! And then we close it because it's so crazy. That's where I was like, this isn't intriguing. I didn't start, and that's where I was like, I love the show at the beginning. Then I liked it. This is kind of the era where I was just liking it. But then I loved it again by the most recent episode where we were doing more interesting things. I think, I just hadn't really thought about it. But the idea of like going into a multiverse where you're like, I think this is my home. And then you realize it is, but all of the experience you had were the exact same. The only difference is this world had some crazy pandemic that is just like killing people indiscriminately. And so then it's like, well, my wife, this is the first version of her where she was my wife and we do have a child in this world. And then it's like, I feel like I need to help euthanize her to get her through this. But then at the same time, it's like, that could give you a disease, which then you will bring into other realities, potentially your original one. And I liked how they paired that like just a few minutes apart with the Blair stuff where she accidentally brought, or an alternate version of her, brought like all these like killer bugs that swarmed the world and then like killed most people. So that element of like bringing things in is very interesting. And it kind of pairs well with like the whole latent motivation. Like we want to bring good from other multiverses into ours to save people. But it seems like every example they've shown us so far is actually like, oh yeah, you're able to bring stuff over, but it's all bad. And it seems to be like world killers that end up you bring over. So that's where I started really loving the show again, kind of like showing those minuscule differences in the multiverses instead of just like, oh, this one's covered in snow, this one's underwater, this one's a desert. That stuff didn't really super work for me.
So we are almost halfway through, and they have now introduced like kind of new elements that brought you back in. That what do you want from the remaining 4 of this show?
It's interesting because as I was watching the most recent episode, I was thinking about where this could end. And my big theory for like the ending of season 1 was like, oh, you know where this is going to end? This is going to end. I was like closing my eyes and picturing it. It's like Jason finally gets home. He has like a tearful reunion with his wife and Charlie. Maybe he kills evil Jason or something, and he gets back, and you're like, wow, he actually made it through. He's back in his original world. But then, like, the final moment just shows actually, this is a version of his world that is almost exactly the same, except, and then it shows, like, some, like, cliffhanger, like, some, like, meteor's about to crash or something. And it's like, oh, this isn't quite his exact world. It's close enough, but it's not the original one. But then episode 5 goes on, and they kind of ended up doing that. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And that was like the world where he goes in, and it's like you find out this is the exact same world, except you did something where you went to prison, now we're exes, but everything else is the same. And I was like, okay, cool. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what's bringing me back in. Kind of these more minuscule differences, not like world-ending multiverse examples. So that was what I was really liking. So now that they already did that, I'm curious where this season ends. I don't know. I don't know if he makes it back. I don't know what's in store for Amanda. I think episode 5, the most recent one, was also big for her, with Blair being like, look, the episode's called Worldless. And I was like, that's a weird, what does that mean? But I love the line where she's like, not only are you homeless, you can't go back to your world. If you walk out of the box in your world, you will be shot dead on sight. Even if you somehow escape, you will be hunted for the rest of your life. But you have no world to call your home either. It's like, do you just go into Jason's world and live there? There could be a version of you there. So you need to kind of like, be a little bit selfish and look out for yourself. Like, I'm at a point like mid-season where I thought I kind of knew where it was going. And I was like, I think there's going to be a confrontation between the Jasons. Good Jason will win, and then he'll live there. But maybe there's going to be like some tweak where it's like, oh, this isn't your original world. But now I don't know, because the most recent episode kind of pulled off some of the things that I was already theorizing. So I'm not 100% sure where we're going yet. You guys have any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think the only other thing I was wondering too is like, how big is this show willing to get? And it's already very big with the multiverse stuff, but they've already kind of touched on like essentially every choice you make splits off an alternate version. So are there now alternate good Jason and Amandas that are still out in the multiverse stuff who maybe got trapped or something and had to rebuild a company and build a new box, and maybe they've like started some organization, almost like the TVA from Loki, who's also now like doing multiverse stuff? Like how crazy do we get with this show? I don't know if it'll ever get that big, but there's so many possibilities that they could kind of go anywhere.
I would like to see, and maybe not this season, but maybe on a second season or third season, like to see some form of closure with good Jason maybe finally making it home in some way. I wanted to ask you guys though, real quick, since we didn't dive too much into it. What is the mechanics of the box itself? So you have to have this psychoactive drug that puts you because your consciousness cannot. The way he explained it, your consciousness cannot comprehend the vastness of all the realities in the hallway. And so you have evil Jason. He is already used to the way the box works, which we now know it goes. Whatever reality you go into is based off of what you're thinking in your head. So he has mastered this because he's able to jump back and forth. Whereas Amanda and Good Jason have not mastered this skill yet. Obviously, they're still trying to find their way back. And same with Good Leighton and Evil Leighton. So them four are still out there lost. So where do you think it goes from there as far as those four characters maybe finally mastering that skill to get to the reality they want? Or was the reason that Evil Jason told the scientist to keep working was maybe he just wants an unlimited amount of drugs that he can just keep going back to?
Yeah, I think that's why I think the most recent episode, in addition to the pilot, are my favorites, because the most recent, like, kind of added in all this, like, good flavor. I don't really give a shit about, like, the science of the box. Whenever they're kind of doing, like, the mumbo jumbo there, I'm kind of like, okay, yeah, cool.
I was reading that there is a physicist who works on the show who won a Nobel Prize for his theory on Schrodinger's cat. And he's advising, like, this. So science is real in this show, which is cool. Like, obviously it's theoretical, but it is based in reality.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That is cool. But yeah, I can't pretend to, like, follow all of it. But the thing that, like, got me back in is I just love the simple inclusion of, like, the honesty within the box plays a major role into where you can pop out. And then, like, kind of like I was talking about earlier, I love, like, the minuscule differences with worlds, like the pandemic world, and then Amanda confronting Jason after that. Like, why did we go there? That's the question you should be asking. And kind of this element of, like, I desperately wanted to find my family. That was all that I was thinking about. And then she being like, but you're also considering your greatest fears of them, like, dying to illnesses like your mom did. So if that stuff is in the back of your mind, then we can never get back to your original world. And that's just such a great pairing with, like, evil Jason, who's able to just literally, he pops back into his original world. He walks out of the door for 5 seconds, grabs some more of the drug, and then just walks back in like, see ya, keep working. Like, he's mastered that. So, like, how long was he traversing the box until he was able to get to Good Jason's world?
I wonder if we'll see worlds that evil Jason has already been to that maybe he, like, devastated or destroyed or, like, left something in his wake.
Or we'll see other versions of Good Jason, I guess. Maybe he didn't get captured by evil Jason in his reality.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about ideas for end of this season or potential future seasons, it's also like, now that we're kind of talking about it, it's like, so it sounds like Jason Dessen is this guy that, clearly is capable of a lot of things when it comes to, like, physics and science and just being able to create something like this. And it's also important to note that Good Jason, remember whenever he first saw the box, he was like, oh, I had thought about this. This is something that he had already thought about, but he was just never able to create the box. But this is an idea that he had wanted to pursue. So it kind of makes me wonder for the future of this show. Like, let's say the final episode is like Good Jason and evil Jason fighting. Good Jason wins, and it's like, oh, his family believes he's the right one. We did it. What a happy ending. But if this bad Jason could get here, wouldn't there be, like, an infinite number of evil Jasons that are also, like, capable of making a box like this? Maybe they already have. Maybe they're already traversing the box in order to find a version of themselves that made the choice to have Charlie with Daniela, because the whole show is built on the premise that that's the choice. Like, that's the big choice in his life. Be with Daniela, have Charlie, or pursue your career. So it's like, it's kind of scary. Even if Good Jason wins at the end, there's other Jasons out there that are just as capable of doing this again.
Yeah, I wonder if he has to find a way into the world and maybe still seal the box in his world to keep other. Like, maybe he realizes that. Or is there a possibility where he comes upon a world where everything is the exact same and there's already a Good Jason there, and he makes the decision to swap it out and just stay there because he's burnt out and he's seen this happen so many times. And then season 2 is that Good Jason now trying to get his way
back. That's a good idea, though. That would be crazy.
Yeah.
Because we've been following him as the good guy the entire time, and then he ends up being, like, doing the same thing that the bad guy, quote unquote, did. That'd be crazy, yeah. And yeah, and then I know we're kind of trying to close out here, but then the Amanda of it all, I don't, like I said, I don't really know where she ends up either, because I don't think it's going to be as simple as, good Jason finally is able to master the box and focus his mind and open the door and be in the original world that he left. But what does Amanda do? She can't stay
I wonder if
there.
she dies on this journey. She feels like a casualty.
Yeah, I do. They're also... I see a version based on the most recent episode where she finds her way back to Blair. Because didn't they say whenever they found that version of Blair, I think she said something like, I was thinking about her, and then they ended up there. I could see those two teaming up whenever Blair's ready, and then they travel the box together or something.
So many possibilities. That's what's fun about this show. If they keep it up, this could be a smash hit for Apple too, and there could be lots of infinite seasons they could do.
It's too much to even comprehend. I have to get some of that psychoactive drug to even think of more possibilities.
We have to go into superposition.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. Forgot about superposition.
We always do. Yeah, but guys, if you don't have anything else, I think that's going to be the end of our conversation. Dark Matter, we've watched 5 episodes. There's 4 left. I'm so excited to see where this goes. Like I said, usually I feel like I'm okay with maybe putting out some theories. I feel like I had 1 this time. I have no idea where it's going to end, but I'm very excited. But yeah, I think before we fully close out here, let's do some Arnie's Podcast Awards. As part of our show where we take something positive, negative, or something in between from the project we just talked about. It just has to be something that we deem awards worthy. So guys, what is it today?
I'm going to give the Navigation Award to Amanda. Because there's one episode where she is kind of losing her shit. And I think 3 different times she just sprints out of the box and gets lost. And by the time we were in the snow world, I was like, Amanda, you gotta keep your bearings, my friend. This is starting to get old real quick. But I'm kind of glad she gathered herself because she was starting to get on my nerves just a little bit in that episode.
I gotta give the World's Strongest Man Award to Good Jason, of all people. Whenever they opened Waterworld starring Kevin Costner and all the water started pouring in, the fact that all he had to do was put his legs against the wall of the box, and then he was magically able to close the door so easily. I was like, what the fuck? You can't do do that.
They did show it sink down, so it lost all its pressure.
I know, but was it at the bottom of the lake? Or were they just in the process of sinking?
I think they went to the bottom of Lake Michigan.
They're at the bottom, then it works. I thought they were still sinking. I was like, wow, so strong.
If anyone else ever tries to go to that world, they're dead. Because they're going to open that thing up and be at the bottom of the lake.
That would be funny if that's how evil Jason dies. He just accidentally goes to Waterworld and then just immediately drowns.
I'm just going to give, because I think it's the number one thing that's standing out to me. I'm just going to give the ultimate dick award. And that goes to evil Jason. Missing his son's birthday at the tree, spending all the money they don't have, quitting his job. I'm like, this guy sucks. This guy's really not doing himself any favors with trying to have the family life. So yeah, the ultimate asshole or dick, whatever you want to call it, Austin, and the awards, go ahead. But yeah, he deserves that one.
You got to show up to your dead son's tree. You can't miss that.
I've always said that.
That's my tips for secret to happy marriage. It's show up to your dead son's tree.
That's a good one. I'm going to keep that in mind. But with that, everybody keep that in mind, please. You should. It's a good note. But thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoy this episode, make sure you hit that follow button so you never miss our upcoming content. Also, please share us with your friends if you enjoyed this episode. We really appreciate it to continue to grow our show. Please leave us reviews as well. Even if you don't want to write anything, leaving us a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever your podcasts, sure does help us out. At the Arnies is our social, and the Arnies.transistor.fm is our website. We'll be back next Tuesday with another episode.
And last week, Matt mentioned it earlier, but we got together and put our thoughts out on Furiosa, the new Mad Max movie that is a great movie, but is bombing at the box office. So if you want to hear our thoughts on that film, be sure to go check it out.
The sad part of that episode is at the end of it, we're like, guys, I think, it's not doing great so far, but if we get to this point, we're going to get Mad Max 5, The Wasteland that George Miller's talking about. I'm here to report today at the end of a Dark Matter episode, there's no chance we ever see another Mad Max movie.
George Miller did say this week he acknowledged that chances were slim, which if George is saying that, the most confident, believe in himself guy,
he's like, you know what? I'm going to work on Babe 3.
All right. Lastly, we want to hear from you, so please send us a message on Instagram at the Arnies or email us thearniesmedia@gmail.com. What did you think of Dark Matter so far? Any theories for the rest of the season? Anything you say, we'll read on the show and react to it live on our latest episode.
That's right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this one. We're loving the show so far. Can't wait to see where it goes. We'll be back next week, like we said, so I hope you had a great week. And also, just a quick little send-off here. We were all three surprised to learn today is our 200th episode. So fun little anniversary. Happy to be doing this. Hope you guys are enjoying the show. We'll see you next time.
I wouldn't want to spend it any other way than with Apple TV. Apple, please send us those checks.
That's a great point. This actually worked out that we were talking about Apple TV, which never misses.
We need some more Severance and Silo. I'm ready.
Keep yourself in superposition, and all your possibilities are endless.
Ew.